thank you for lunch.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming over for lunch. I really appreciate it. So I've been very interested in the times I've gotten to talk to you about mushrooms, and I think there's this like resurging interest in them that's really been taken off lately too. There's new books about it, and there's this interest in kind of like on one side from chefs and on this culinary side, and then on the medicinal side. Which ones do you deal with?
We grow all mushrooms. We grow 30 different species throughout the year. We grow gourmet and medicinal mushrooms.
And then in terms of the like mushroom varieties that you've gotten into or that you sell, like you sell at stores, you sell like multi-packs, what is it?
Stores and chefs, primarily restaurants, Charlottesville area. And we're certified organic. We sell mushroom spawn and we sell tools to cultivate mushrooms.
And then when you're talking about mushrooms, it's come a lot lately too. And I'm just curious about your take on it, but like mushrooms as medicine, what do you eat them because of that, or do you eat them just because you really like them, or like?
Yeah, mushrooms are delicious. That's why I eat them. And the medicinal properties of mushrooms are secondary to their flavor profile for me anyway.
That's cool. And then in terms of, because a lot of what I've been trying to figure out from each person that we've talked to on this too is kind of like what's special in Virginia. So you grow both indoor and then also outdoor, like forage harvest too, and then you guys are running experiments.
So we grow in a hoop house. In the summertime, we bring the tropical species out during the temperate season.
So what's special about it? First off, what mushroom varieties are people familiar with when it comes to Virginia?
Are you talking about wild mushrooms?
Yeah.
Morels, and they have several different names. Merkles, hickory chickens, whatever.
Chicken of the woods, yeah.
And then there's chicken of the woods, people like that. Hen of the woods, which is mycology. Chanterelles, which we'll find growing in association with oaks. And other than that, people aren't that excited about the different mushrooms that they find.
Well, I mean, what are consumers most accustomed to?
People that buy mushrooms are buying shiitake mushrooms and oyster mushrooms. Lion's mane has come on the scene quite a bit because it permits our body to, it helps our body to grow nerve growth factor and regenerate nerves. And it's been used in a lot of cognitive decline studies and cognitive decline and that. But I'm not an herbalist. I don't know much.
Yeah, but you do live in this middle ground kind of between the worlds. Because I think in general too, if you're growing mushrooms like that, you get a lot of questions about that too.
Oh, sure.
Health side effects, can I trip on this? Like all those kind of fun things that fall into a spectrum of like, where are mushrooms medicine versus where are they just good sustenance? In terms of what you guys are growing and what people can find outdoors. So I think there's like three groups, right? There's the foragers that it is like a pastime too, as well as like, hobby groups and stuff like that. Then there's the grocery store buyers or, just farmers market buyers, people that love buying mushrooms. And then the third group is kind of like the hobbyists that are growing them on their own. Has that group changed at all, or like the amount of people in each group? Have you seen that change?
Definitely people are more interested in growing mushrooms since the pandemic and people staying at home and looking for projects at home. Gardening has picked up, and also mushroom growing.
And then when people start with that too, is there like, because I know with gardening in general, I have people that will say like, I don't have a green thumb. And I tell them like, do you guys have a thumb color for mushrooms?
Brown?
Yeah, right. I don't know, but I'm just saying like, do you find people saying like, I can't do it, it's too difficult, or?
Well, I think those are people that give up too soon.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think if you want to get started in mushroom growing, oyster mushrooms are by far the easiest to cultivate. And you can go on from there once you learn how to cultivate on logs. It's pretty simple.
And then is that, when you're saying it's pretty simple, like in terms of making them or in terms of like?
Well, just inoculating the logs with spawn and then putting them in the woods and allowing them to get rained on and making sure they don't dry out. I think those are all important aspects.
I actually forgot about this. So like one of these, right? Yeah. And then you have them inoculated. I got this from you, actually.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Not from you, but it was at one of the conferences. And so I went in and put the bid for it. So, but anyway, so then I was told by somebody, all I got to do is like dunk this in water when I want to put it outside and then just go for it.
Well, that should be outside on the ground. That's
already
in Ailanthus, which is a tree of heaven.
Fantastic.
Which I think is one of our best mushroom logs in Virginia because I've been able to grow 20 different species on that tree. But that should be on the ground.
Flat
on the ground.
Yeah.
Partially buried in some mulch so that the mycelium can go into the earth and get moisture and nitrogen. It'll attack microbes for nitrogen and so forth.
Okay, I'm glad I had you over for lunch now. That's I totally I'm going to do it wrong and mess it up. Well, because even I'm trying to explore some of these things, but there is a very big difference between on the agricultural side of growing and farming these things versus being a hobbyist, let's say, or like making enough for yourself and learning about it. When you're teaching out on the farm too, doing workshops, doing all this other stuff, what is most of the interest? Where does that come from?
Again, I think people really want to be connected to their food, and I think it's one way they can do it. If they already have it, most of the people that come to the workshops already have a garden, and they might have some a wooded area or some shady area that they can use for mushroom growing.
And they're trying to do more of it. And then in terms of your experiments too, because I found this really interesting though too. You were talking about tropical mushrooms.
Yes.
What types are you growing, and then how do those conditions are they favorable in Virginia? Do we live in a jungle?
We grow milky mushroom from southern India, and we grow some mushrooms from Southeast Asia. And they include Hymenopellis, Rhaphionipes, and Radicata. There are some others that we grow. I brought a warm weather strain of Agrosabe cylindracea back from Thailand, and we grow that in the summertime outside.
So, no clue what those are, but
well, we call them Radex.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Radicate xeroloid mushrooms.
I like that much better, but I still get that too.
Yeah, mycologists talk funny.
I know you mentioned you're not an herbalist though, but on that side of things too, are there certain mushrooms though that for health reasons seem to sell a lot more, even on the commercial side, even on the kitchen side?
We grow a lot of reishi, which is Ganoderma lucidum, and we grow that in the summertime in the hoop house, and we sell that year-round. People are interested in that. They make tinctures of it. We sell a line of teas that has that mushroom in it. And, so that is the primary medicinal mushroom that we sell. It's been in traditional Chinese medicine for a couple of thousand years.
Yeah, and and that's I wanted to start diving into that world, but it seems like a whole lot, just in terms of like the history of fungi. I've said this for a while now, I guess, but I feel like, trees talk to each other, but fungi are higher on the food system than we are. How do you feel about that?
Fungi are higher on the food system?
The food chain than humans, yeah.
Oh, well, I think humans eat just about everything, so we would be at the pinnacle of the food chain.
Oh, I thought fungi, they eat everything.
Fungi can, many different species will eat different things, but yeah.
Oh, so it's like a variety of. In terms of just that role too, though, do you feel like there's different cultures or communities that form around not the mushroom growth, but like of people that get interested in mushrooms themselves?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, there are many mushroom clubs around the area. The Mycological Association of Washington, D.C., the Blue Ridge Mushroom Club, and the New River Mushroom Club. All of those are people that love to forage and have experts. So if you're interested in foraging, that's a good place to start, is to go out with people that know what they're talking about.
Are these like weekly clubs, or would they?
You'd have to get in touch with them.
They do different things.
I have no idea what they do.
But there's different meeting points now that people are, because, all right, so for instance, when I first moved to Virginia, somebody started telling me about morels, and I went like, oh, it's so cool. There's something seasonal, and like there's a window, in what, like you say, March, April, kind of like.
Yeah, somewhere in there. It's over now in our place.
Yeah, but I could not get, even with friends at the farmer's market and other people, I was like, hey, I really want to film like somebody picking them, they're like, you're not bringing cameras to where I found mine.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
People are secretive about their mushroom spots.
Yeah.
Or with their fishing holes.
Okay, so do you see mushroom hunting as more akin to like what you're saying, fishing?
No, I think mushroom hunting is a great excuse to go into the woods with people that you like and have a good time and experience nature and, open your eyes to whatever's there. It doesn't have to be mushrooms. It can be other things.
Yeah. And what about in terms of, because again, that kind of like that culture starting to grow and build out, but, I'm following stories about artisan baking movements really coming out. Do you feel like there's a lot of new mushroom farmers starting up, and like has that seen change in the past like 5-10?
Been a few mushroom farms that have come online in the last couple of years. People are interested, and they think they can do it, and more power to them. So I don't know what most people do in their businesses. There are other mushroom farms. I don't know what they do.
That's fair, but in terms of your own though too, do you think there's a misconception from the outside? I know for some people, I call it the old McDonald's syndrome. They like move from a city somewhere and then they're like, oh, I want 3 of these, 4 of those, 12 of these, 20 of those, and it's like,
E-I-E-I-O.
Yeah, you're not going to make it, right? Do you feel like there's a misconception about like mushroom farming is just, well, you just have to set them and then you don't do anything for the other 5 days?
Well, we do everything from the clean room work, taking from a petri plate of mycelium and expanding that into sterilized grain and then into our substrate, and we grow the mushrooms from there. So a lot of people don't take that extra step at the beginning. You can buy bags and just fruit them out and skip that step. And it is by far the most challenging part of growing mushrooms. Is to make sure everything is sterile as you move along the process
and build that out. I've been doing some research or trying to kind of like look more into it too, and I always try to categorize things in certain ways, but like in terms of growing them too, are there certain mushrooms that are like these are the hardest to grow, these are the easiest, like guild versus like pores or anything like that?
Well, I don't think it comes down to that. I think oyster mushrooms are by far the easiest mushrooms. They're not very fastidious in what they like to eat. So you put them on almost any species of
fungal,
cellulose and wood.
Yeah.
Maitake, tough to grow. Shiitake, pretty easy to grow.
Yeah.
There's some in the middle and there's some more difficult.
And is it conditions too? Like, is there something special about here in Virginia? I know you were mentioning too, you're taking some, not commercial, but just some that are usually grown indoors and you're starting to put them outside.
Yeah, well, we experiment at all different levels with the different strains that we have. We grow them indoors, we try them outside, we try them on ailanthus, we try them in the hoop house. It just depends on the seasonality and what those mushrooms need.
And see what works. In terms of, and again, it's kind of going back to mushroom farming though, but what are the misconceptions? There's always misconceptions.
About mushroom farming?
About mushroom farming, about mushrooms. Like you'll talk to a baker and people go like, is it gluten-free?
Well, here's an example. I had an older woman come into my booth at the farmer's market one time and she said, are any of your mushrooms poisonous? And I said, well, lady, we tried that, but didn't have any repeat customers. So no, these are all edible.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
And other people are like, oh, any of these make me high? It's like,
why would we
use them as a suppository?
Yeah.
Why don't you take $5 home and let us know how that turns out? But I'm not, that's why we don't sell at the farmer's market anymore.
Sometimes. Yeah. Well, it's fine. I mean, there's a gap between education and like where those things are coming from. Right. But yeah, there are some times where it's kind of, I don't know whether it's just because of convenience or what it is though too, but so that's another thing that I always ask everybody, whether it's at the farmer's market or not, to be honest with you. What's one better question that somebody should ask when they're asking about mushrooms? Like if they have a display.
Are these cultivated organically?
And what makes it organic?
I think mushrooms are dynamic accumulators of heavy metals, and they can accumulate toxins pretty readily. So you want organic mushrooms. I think that's really important.
So they soak up everything that's in their vicinity too, though.
They can.
Yeah.
They will deconstruct different molecules and bring in what they need from that, but they also will bioaccumulate heavy metals and other things that are not good for our health.
And then what gives you the organic, in terms of organic? Because, I mean, I know you're not spraying them.
Well, only with water.
Right. But what I'm saying is, like, for someone's conception of, like, what organic is, like, an organic cow, and I think people think of one thing, you know, or whatever, milk, and you know, a lot of times organic, people don't know what that actually means.
We don't use pesticides. We don't use any kind of spray to control pests. We follow all the organic guidelines for mushroom cultivation, and you know, every time we change an input, we need to run it by our certifier.
Yeah.
So I think, you know.
So other than 20-somethings that just don't get it, what are the biggest pests for growing mushrooms?
The biggest fungus gnats, slugs, snails.
They just show up out of, like, you're talking about indoor or outdoor?
I'm talking about outdoor.
Oh, okay.
But indoor too, fungus gnats are a problem.
Huh.
But I keep looking for a slug that's moving sluggishly, and maybe we can get some nematodes out of that thing that we can control slug populations.
Huh.
So it's ecology.
Yeah.
Growing mushrooms is about ecology and not just the mushroom. It's about everything.
Yeah, the ecosystem that you're creating around it and how that relationship plays with other items that are out there too. Do you feel like there's anything to, like, somebody that's growing mushrooms in Virginia, let's say, than Ohio or Nebraska or somewhere, like, is there something interesting about our climate that helps certain mushrooms, or everywhere is good for mushrooms?
We have plenty of water, which I think is important. And we have wooded areas, which I think also important. We need shade. But you could probably grow mushrooms just about anywhere as long as you can control the moisture content of whatever you're growing.
And where it's at. For you, and I know I talked about this a little bit earlier too, in terms of misconceptions, but what do you feel like is the most important thing that if people knew about, and I'm going to keep it broad, I guess, like mushrooms in general, would be really helpful for, like, just that awareness, like their sales too, but just more importantly, like awareness of, like, when they see them out in the woods too, like.
Mushrooms are the fruit of the rot. So, you know, and other mushrooms that grow in association with plant roots, like chanterelles and boletes and things like that, this is the way trees communicate with each other. It's through the mycelial networks and that live in the soil.
So mushrooms are the cell phones for the ants?
I don't know about cell phones, but they're the molecular communicators.
I'm just going to go home tonight. I just want to think about it that way on my own. It's fine if you disagree.
Well, I mean, Suzanne Simard had an excellent experiment. I don't remember exactly when she did that, maybe the mid-90s, and they were looking at some small Doug fir trees in the northwest temperate rainforests and wondered, how do these small trees survive when they get no sunlight?
Mm-hmm.
And so what they did was they radio-labeled carbon and put it in the big trees that were photosynthesizing, and they realized that the mycelium of the mycorrhizal fungi actually moved energy to the small trees because the fungus sees its future there.
Yeah.
And so that's how those trees survive until a big tree falls and it has sunlight so it can grow up.
Yeah. So it has a chance there too. I mean, I've always been fascinated about thinking about it that way, or just in terms of the relationships. And it absolutely changes. The more you learn about farming, about ag, it's really funny, like that relationship to being a steward of the land and figuring out what those roles are. But more importantly, too, one, that you have no control, really. But you can have input, right? And like testing those things out. Do you feel like in terms of growing indoor versus outdoor, like indoor is for consistency and is for certain things, outdoor is for passion, or is there?
Yeah, indoor is for year-round cultivation. Outdoors is for experimenting with different mushrooms. Is this a viable strain that people can grow? Will it work? What are the parameters of growing this mushroom? What do we need to tell people when they buy this?
Yeah.
So I think that's why we continually experiment. And And also the tropical mushrooms that we grow outside and in the hoop house, I think are pretty exceptional, some of them.
What are some of those?
The milky mushroom.
That's the one you meant, yeah.
The eradicate xeroids.
Okay.
Yeah.
And these are ones that people would like have not seen at stores. They would not.
No.
Yeah, okay.
You can't find these.
Yeah. So who are you, in terms of, you were mentioning buyers though too, if you're okay mentioning though, but like who are your biggest, whatever, pick your word, nerds in terms of buyers, like at restaurants or otherwise too, where like they're fascinated by this stuff?
Well, mostly the chefs we work with know what to do with the mushrooms. So if I run across a chef and they don't know what to do with it, then I usually am not selling to them.
Right.
So, but most of the chefs are pretty good about understanding how to cook mushrooms.
Yeah. In mushrooms too, there seems to be this culinary flair. It's like you could almost have these like beard growing competitions, but instead it's just mushrooms. Do you know what I mean? And I've seen a few companies start up. In terms of if somebody do we need more mushroom farmers or are we good?
I think the more people growing food for themselves, the better it will be.
And then if you wanted to start up like, what's the one swimming pool word? No, what would be like, if I wanted to grow enough for me for the year and say every week I go out to the grocery store and I buy a small container of mushrooms. If I wanted that going out throughout, maybe not all months, but a majority of them, how much is it talking about in terms of like money and energy?
Well, you would need to get logs specific to the mushroom strains you wanted to grow, and then I would say pick several that grow in that fruit in different seasons.
Years, yeah.
And that way you can have mushrooms close to during the temperate season, 9 months of the year anyway.
And are there any, this is just out of curiosity, are there any that people like, say I live in a city and I want to have it in my apartment. I'm a plant mom already. I've got tons of those, whatever, the low light growing plants, all this other stuff. Like, can I add mushrooms to that collection or?
Yeah, we sell what we call shrimp blooms, which are grow kits, and they work very well indoors in indirect light.
I love those. So anything that I did not ask you though that you think would be important to bring up?
Well, I think helping farmers to diversify, to utilize fungi, whether it be amplifying native mycorrhizal fungi or capturing entomopathogenic fungi, that is insect pathogens that we can actually inoculate to plants and will grow inside of plants without any disease symptoms. I think that's important. I think helping farmers diversify into growing mushrooms is important because they have a lot of different agricultural byproducts that they could use.
Already there, yeah. And they have the tools usually too.
Yeah. So I think the more farmers get into it, the better it's going to be in the long term, not only for their economy, but for the health of the community.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting because you always see at the market, it's usually like a mushroom farmer.
Right.
Or other thing.
Or a vegetable farmer.
Yeah. Or the meat. Yeah. You don't usually get to see this kind of like mix of it. That's really interesting. Thank you so much for coming out and for doing this. I really appreciate it. And then if people want to find out more about you or look you up too, you've got, you sell online, you sell at, mostly to the chefs though too.
Yeah.
And you put on some workshops.
Yes.
Right.
SharondaleFarm.com.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'd go visit them too, and check that out and grab some of these very, what do you call them? What do you call your interesting mushrooms too? I know all of them are interesting, but the jungle.
We grow a lot of things that are esoteric that people have never heard of, and so those aren't always available because we haven't come up with the low-tech methods for cultivating them yet. We're still working on that.
Well, I would still check out Sharondale Farm over in Sismont for their esoteric mushrooms as well as the rest of them too. Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you.